Board of Lane County Commissioners. Today is Tuesday, December 3rd, 2024. Welcome back to those of you who were with us in Harris Hall this morning, to those of you just joining us for the afternoon, and to anyone watching online. We will jump right into our 1:30 p.m. time certain item, which is item 10A from Public Works. This is a third reading and deliberations regarding ordinance number PA 1387 in the matter of amending the Rural Comprehensive Plan to redesignate land from agricultural to residential, rezoning that land from E25 exclusive farm use to RR10 rural residential, and taking an irrevocably committed exception to statewide planning goal 3 and adopting a savings and severability clause. This is planning action file number 509-PA20-05634, and the applicant is Perkins, and I will welcome our senior planner, Shauna Adams, to the table. Good afternoon, and have you introduce and walk us through the item.
Good afternoon, thank you. I do believe we have some procedural issues.
Great. Ann Davies from Office of County Counsel, is she going to walk us through?
Okay, I think the only thing is
It's a chair guide. Okay.
yeah,
Okay,
so because this is again, Ann Davies, County Counsel's Office. This is a quasi-judicial matter, so we have the ex parte contact disclosures that even though you've done it in past meetings, you need to do it again to make sure there wasn't ex parte contacts that weren't disclosed in between that period and now. So we need to go through that.
I have a script. If I had only followed my script, there would be.
That's the only.
Thank you. Here we are. Okay. Thank you. The Board of Commissioners is the approval authority for these proceedings. Materials relating to this proceeding are available on the board's agenda webpage and include the supplemental staff report, additional testimony, ordinance, and findings. Previously, the board members held a second reading and continued hearing on October 15, 2024. The hearing and record are closed as of October 15, 2024. Therefore, the purpose of this proceeding is the board's final deliberation on the matter. Because the hearing and record are closed, no public comment or written testimony from any party or person can be placed in front of the board members at this time. Deliberations are a time for the commissioners to discuss among themselves the evidence and testimony heard and determine if the applicable approval criteria have been satisfied. When deliberations have concluded, or as part of the deliberations, commissioners may make a motion. Staff have provided motion options for the board's use in the supplemental agenda cover memo. At this time, here we go. Commissioners must disclose any pre-hearing ex parte contact. If any commissioner has received or had ex parte contact, then please, for the record, 1, disclose the substance, circumstance, and parties to such communication, and 2, state whether you can render a fair and impartial decision. I'll just go one by one here to see if any commissioner needs to make any ex parte disclosures, starting with Commissioner Senega,
I've none.
Commissioner Buck,
None.
Commissioner Farr,
None additional.
and Vice Chair Lovell.
None.
Now I'll ask each commissioner to disclose any personal knowledge, bias, prejudgment, or personal interest or conflicts of interest. Commissioner Senega,
None.
Buck,
None.
Commissioner Farr,
Negative, none.
Vice Chair Lovell.
No conflicts.
Does any commissioner need to disclose personal knowledge, bias? Oh, sorry, and I have neither had any ex parte communication nor any personal knowledge, bias, prejudgment, or personal interest or conflicts of interest. Does any commissioner need to disclose personal knowledge, bias, prejudgment, or personal interest or conflicts of interest? Commissioner Senega,
No.
Commissioner Buck,
None.
Commissioner Farr,
None.
and Vice Chair Lovell?
None.
And I also have none to declare. The applicant and those in attendance are allowed at this point to rebut any of the disclosures heard, if any, and to challenge the qualification of any commissioner based on bias, prejudgment, or conflict of interest. Is there anyone wishing to provide any rebuttal to what they've heard or to challenge qualifications of commissioners? Seeing no one in Harris Hall. Jessica, is there anyone online?
Not.
Was that a no, or are you still checking? I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
No, there is no one online.
Thank you. Is there anything additional from County Council on this matter? Okay, great, thank you. We will now hear the supplemental staff report from Ms. Adams. Please introduce the documents before us and give us your presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Trigger and Commissioners. Again, for the record, I'm Shauna Adams, the land management staff assigned to the matter before you, which is a third reading and board deliberations for ordinance number PA 1387, planning action file number 509 PA 2005634, which has been read in already by the chair. As you may recall, on December 5th of last year, the board directed staff and the applicant to draft an ordinance with findings of fact in support of the board's tentative approval and to return to the board for a first and second reading and subsequent public hearing on the ordinance. The board conducted the second reading and continued public hearing on October 15th, 2024, closed the public hearing and began deliberations on the ordinance with the findings drafted by the applicant in support of approval. After deliberating, the board directed staff to return for a third reading with a revised ordinance and findings, specifically to remove statements made in the findings that growing hay and harvesting hay on the neighboring properties would not constitute a farm use, and the statements asserting that farm use of the subject property would result in objections by a neighboring property owner who's provided written testimony to the contrary. Today's supplemental agenda cover memo contains a revised ordinance and findings according to the board's directive with a few minor corrections in text. All of the changes to the findings were made in coordination with the applicant's agent and county council with no concerns of note. A third reading was set for today for the board to deliberate on the changes made by staff. Today, the board could take final action by approving and enacting the ordinance as presented with the agenda cover memorandum, which is the option staff has recommended in consideration of the board's tentative approval. Alternatively, the board could direct staff to make additional changes to the orders or could decide to tentatively deny the proposal instead. Suggested motion language has been provided in the agenda cover memorandum for whatever the board opts. That concludes my presentation unless you have questions for me at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Are there any questions for Shauna Adams from the board? Seeing none. All right. So then we move into deliberations. The Board of County Commissioners will now begin to deliberate on the proposal. The board is tasked with deciding if, based on the evidence presented, this proposal meets the applicable criteria. This decision cannot be based on the personal preference of commissioners. Rather, it is based on criteria and evidence. Board members are encouraged to reference the applicable standards and specific evidence in their deliberation and to frame their comments, if any, and deliberation with applicable facts and criteria. At This time, the board may ask questions of staff, but the record has been closed and would need to be reopened by motion and vote if the board needs additional information from the applicant or other hearing participants. Staff have provided motions for our consideration in the supplemental agenda cover memo. And as just outlined by staff, we have those three options before us. So I will turn this over to the board for any discussion, last chance for questions, or a motion.
Chair, I'm ready for a motion.
Vice Chair.
I move to approve and enact ordinance PA number 1387 as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved by the Vice Chair and seconded by Commissioner Senega. Any discussion to the motion? Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. I'm looking through the whereas in the actual motion in the ordinance. And the last whereas is whereas evidence exists within the record indicating that the proposal meets the requirements of Lane Code Chapter 16 and the requirements of the applicable state and local law. Then we get into the therefores. So that whereas is a part of the action that we take today, that evidence does in fact exist within the record indicating the proposal meets the requirements of Lane Code Chapter 16. That is correct.
That's what the board determined last December, yes.
That's correct. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions or comments, this is an ordinance, so we have a roll call vote. So I'll ask the administrator to please call the roll for the vote.
Commissioner Senega,
Yes.
Commissioner Buck,
No.
Commissioner Farr,
Yes.
Commissioner Lovall,
Yes.
and Commissioner Trieger.
No. Motion carries 3-2. And if there's anything else from staff? And thank you to Mr. Reeder and the applicants. That concludes this item. And we are on to, thank you all, item 11, Commissioners' Business. Are there any announcements from commissioners this afternoon? Seeing none. Any future board assignment requests? None. No assignments to review. Is there any other business today for the good of the order? Anything from the administrator? No. Well, then with that, we do have a 2 p.m. time certain with outside folks. So we will, I will read us in. That is an executive session. And just bring that up. We just went so quickly, I didn't have that at the ready. The Board of County Commissioners will now meet in one executive session. This session is to consider the employment of a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent, and to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection. This executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.6602A and ORS 192.6602F, which allows the Board of Commissioners to meet in executive session for the purposes listed. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are precluded from attending. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. Members of the news media are not allowed to tape, video record, or otherwise record an executive session. Verbatim notes are prohibited. No decision may be made in executive session. We will not come back into public session after this executive session. So at the sound of my gavel, we will be adjourned in the regular meeting, and then I will read us in again to executive session, after which we will adjourn for the day and be back here next Tuesday, December 10th.